Honorable Indar Deodat.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity for me to give my few remarks on this budget. And well, normally when the opposition give their speeches, walk out. So where is my friend? Oh, Mr. Speaker, when I was a little boy, I had a habit. I had a habit of chewing my handkerchief. It is always a tasteless thing, but it's just a habit that I have. That presentation by the honorable member was just like chewing that handkerchief. It was tasteless. It was a tasteless presentation by the honorable member, Jurita Fernandez. It was like chewing a handkerchief. Try it sometime. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you know, sometimes I believe that the AP and UAFC think that the Guyanese people have goldfish memory. By the time we flip up in the year and we come back, we forget, but we don't forget. And allow me, during my presentation, to remind the APNU, every single one of them, and every single person that is watching this budget debate. I will first turn my attention to the Honorable Member Roysdale Ford, who spoke at the beginning of today's debate. And he quoted one Mr. Ram, Mr. Christopher Ram, somebody who I know in the accounting fraternity for many, many years.
Okay, Minister, just be careful using his name. You could maybe use his article, but not his name.
Well, they said so. I'm just reporting to what they said.
You're cutting into your own time.
Anyway, the article that the member quoted about Guyana will lose 100 million USD in 100 billion or 10% in inefficiencies. Well, I don't know where that mathematics came from or what justification they have to produce rather than an article that is quoted in this National Assembly. If any iota of evidence to show the inefficiency can be produced, let it be shown to the House, rather than quote an article that doesn't have any root in any study, in any of efficiency in Guyana, in efficiency of procurement, efficiency on execution. If the article has a basis in fact, produce the fact. Other than that, it is just designed for enthusiastic corruption of the public good. That is what it is designed for. And it's repeated in this honorable House. I also want to touch on the honorable members talking about trickle-down economics and waste, fraud, and abuse and slush fund. And these are the things that they use to describe the budget that we presented on behalf of the PPP government. And talk about a visionary roadmap. He spoke about a visionary roadmap, that the PPP don't have a visionary roadmap. Mr. Speaker, in any government, the wisdom, the collective wisdom of a cabinet, it is to the extent of what the leader sees, what the leader of the cabinet sees. And I am telling you, based on, Mr. Speaker, their government, their leader, Deodat Granger, his vision, his roadmap was selling cook-up and fried rice and fish and chips. That is what he went and told the people. That is the vision and the roadmap that the APNU government will come here and tell us about having a roadmap. It was him who spoke it, not Indar. It was Deodat Granger who spoke it. You can't unspoke that or unspeak that. You can't do that because he said it to people who wanted to hear about opportunities. Fish and chips and cook-up rice. That is the world vision of the APNU government. That is what you call a street view. That is not world view, that is street view. That is the roadmap that the APNU member spoke about. Come on, man. He spoke about poverty is pervasive. Poverty is pervasive. Mr. Speaker, I'm a man who study the Holy Book. I go to church on a Sunday to keep sane. Just to keep my foot on the ground, I try to go to church every Sunday to hear the pastor. Mr. Speaker, I know that in every single nation on earth since the foundations of the earth had poverty. Every single nation. Which one don't have poverty? Let any one of those bright scholars over there show it. Poverty will always be with you. It's how you address it is the difference between our government, which I'll show you just now, and when they were in government. I'll show it just now. He spoke about UG, 4.1 billion, and compared to the gold scholarship, and talk about the gold scholarship. I mean, I'm not going to rehash what my comrade Joe, the honorable member, spoke about. But the gold scholarship gave 21,442 Guyanese a chance of an education. 21,442 Guyanese from all walks of life, every part of this country. Every part. And you are going to cuss that in this honorable house? You are telling that 21,442 people you don't deserve that? Who are we in this house to say that? Our job when we were elected is to make sure we enhance people's lives, and the only way through that is education. If a man was born and raised in poverty, his only chance out of that is via education. I am one that is standing here as evidence of that education can take you out of poverty and bring you so that you can address this honorable house on the budget before the country. I am evidence of that. He said the budget lacked consultation. I don't know which rock the honorable member crawl out of. I don't know which tomb just break out and they just crawl out of the tomb. I will tell you, the Manufacturers Association issued statements because they had consultation. The Private Sector Commission issued statements. The Chamber of Commerce, of Industry, over 1,000 members they have, issued a positive statement. The Upper Quarantine Chamber, the Barbies Chamber, the Reason Tree Chamber, all of the chambers, the Essequibo Chamber, the Badminton Association, the Squash Association, everybody issued statement on this budget because they were part of the process. And he now crawled out of a rock and said, oh, there was no consultation. He just crawled out of he broke out the tomb and crawled out. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And this honorable member, Honorable Ford, came to this house and spoke about the Constitution and adhering to the Constitution and appointment of Chancellor of the Judiciary. He has the gall, the straight face to come to this honorable house and talk about upholding the Constitution. When they were squatting in office for 5 whole long months, he led the fight to go to the court over and over, as they say in the countryside, goatee in one dal, till they end up with something called res judicata, because they're trying one case over the next. For the same issue, I got the AG laughing there now. Even to the AG find it funny. That gentleman who the honorable member for, he was the one who was leading the fight to keep illegal government in office, squatting. And he come here to lecture us about Constitution and adhering to Constitution. We don't need a lecture from that particular member. Maybe the younger members who weren't part of it can come here and talk about that. Not him. Mr. Speaker, he spoke, I will rebuke every liar, every mistruth, every misguided information that was spoken in this house. Mr. Speaker, they're talking about poor and vulnerable, the Honorable Ford. I'll come to my friend Ms. Jurita just now with her, that crazy mathematics that came out. But let me deal with Ford first. Mr. Ford said that this budget does not cater for the poor and the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, there was something under 2015 to 2020 government under the APNU AFC that I refer to the great turning away. They turned their face away from the poor and the vulnerable. And I'll tell you how they did. The first thing that they did was introduce about 200 hardship measures. We call it hardship measures because that is what it is. You don't tax fertilizer herbicide and pesticide to grow food. They didn't do that. Is what is a hardship measure. They talk about the poor and the vulnerable, the elderly folks. Mr. Speaker, they tax the elderly folks. The water that you used to pray and say namaz and pray and cook food and feed the churches who feed the vulnerable, the water that you use, they put on VAT on it. Imagine they're taxing the thing that you use to wash your hand and clean yourself to go and pray in the morning. That is what they're talking about. The vulnerable and the poor, water, like Bill, they remove the subsidy from the light. That is what they do, and they are coming to talk about poor and vulnerable. Every single thing under the sun they tax. To all the fees they increase. Even to the balalacha, that the thing? Balalacha. Even to that man they tax. That man was pushing the little card they tax, the Huskers. The Huskers man they increase the fee. The younger people in here don't know that, but the previous finance minister, I think he's wake up every morning. Minister sorry, he's not here to defend himself. He used to wake up every morning and say, where we going to tax you, Mr. Granger? Where we going to tax today? I'll tell you what else they tax. They tax education, developmental things. Okay, got some students over there. Education, I was president of the chamber at that time, run down by your office and abuse you out for it. Oh, you want to tax development? You want the country to raise up dunces? You want the country to raise up dunces? We can't. Shame. It was a shameful thing they did. Listen to me. The Irfan Ali administration did not put no pook people inside his government. He put up educated people. He put up educated people in his house to defend this budget. So don't bring those things to us here. They tax food. Imagine he's talking about poor. Food. They tax food. Things like butter. They tax butter. You can't even talk to your girlfriend and your boyfriend long. They tax the data. They tax the data. The food, bread, Mr. Speaker, bread. People don't know how bread is made. They got flour and they got something named shortening that's going to it to make it. They tax the shortening. So the bread price gone up. So the people start making rather than the bread be so long. They bring down the bread this size to maintain the price. That is what they are doing. They're talking about hardship measures. Mr. Speaker, they talk about Gaisuku. They talk about Gaisuku. And I'm glad the Honorable Ramjatan is here because he always come with 2 spare, 5 knife and every ammunition he could find to go after Gaisuku. But Mr. Ford spoke of Gaisuku. Mr. Speaker, I do walk house to house in this country. How every community I go, I walk, talk to people. I spoke to, there was one time when I was walking in a place called Zilot North. And I saw an old man sitting in a corner on the step, and I saw a lady picking shrimps. She was picking shrimps. Be quiet, you might learn something. The lady is picking shrimps. So I asked if everything is okay. I had about 3 young ladies with me because they control the area, and they were walking with me. We walk and we said, so I looked at the lady, and the lady didn't raise her head. I said, what are you doing? Is it everything okay? She said, no. The lady continued to pick the shrimps. So I'm walking out now. And my comrade said, Minister, she does that for a living. So I walk in back. And I asked them lady, I said, ma'am, you picking shrimps to cook? She said, no, we just do this for work. So she's picking shrimps, butter bowl they call it, by butter bowl. They get $140 per butter bowl. And she's picking the shrimps. You can only pick at least 10, you can pick at most 10 of them butter bowls. So you're talking about $1,400 a day this lady can work. So look, next door I see a man. So I said, your husband work? And so she said, yes, but he get laid off. He used to work at Gaisuku. So I said, he doesn't do anything anymore? She says, no, because when crop come back, you're going to go back. So this is what the workers in Gaisuku, this is not 6 billion number you're talking about. This is the lives you're talking about. That situation there, Mr. Speaker, was cascading across the country when they put over 7,000 people out of work. That is what it did to their family. It destroyed their family. And they come to this very house and boast about it. That is the most shameful thing that the APNU ever did. And to have members like Mr. Ramjatan, you'll have your time to speak later, but I'm speaking now. Them come and defend, showing them people out to work. Wales, Mangle iron. When you go to Wales, you look at the factories, mangle iron, plus the thief out the mangle iron too. They stole the man, they give it to their friends. Destroy Wales, 1,700 workers on the bottom line. And they come to this house and talk about guys suku and talk about guys like if those are not people, those are Guyanese just like me and you. And they deserve every right to unemployment and a decent wage to mind their family. So when we bring figures to this house to say we're going to keep the industry alive, we're going to keep it alive. Because that is people. They have children. They suffer the same way like we. They bleed the same way like we. They're not a different race. They're not a different culture. They're not a foreign entity. They are us. Mr. Speaker, I want to also turn to our good friend, Ms. Jurita Finance now. Mr. Speaker, she said in her words that the Right Honorable Dr. Singh lied about the budget deficit and the overdraft. I don't know which book she was reading or which report she was reading, but the Bank of Guyana had recording in creditors, the creditors balance. We're supposed to always be a credit balance because it's a creditor, a debit inside of there, which is owed to government of Guyana, hidden in those account balances, hidden in there, $92 billion worth of off the book unauthorized spending that they had. It was not part of the consolidated fund. It was on the Bank of Guyana books, and they hid it. And what happened, it wasn't reported, and what happened, Mr. Speaker, is that it contracted the asset base of the Bank of Guyana. When you're looking for the money, you couldn't see where the overdraft was. They hid it. I took 3 analysts in the private sector, one as the president, and I found it, and I made it public. That is what they did. They hid the debt. So it's not showed up in the government books, it's on the Bank of Guyana records. That is what our government had to come here and bring legislation to carry up the debt ceiling, issue the treasury bills, have the debenture. That is what 11.4 million US increase in payments because of that debt.
That's after we have seen
What we inherited. So she's reading the wrong report. I don't know what kind of shadow finance minister they have been reading the wrong report. Mr. Speaker, it's there everywhere. You got to quote the report. Go and check it. Go and read it. Go and read it. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak a little about the comparison that the honorable member made. I want to know how much time I have left because I want to speak about something. Mr. Speaker, she compared sugar, forestry, shrimp, bauxite, rice, and gold. They use that comparison. Let me give you a comparison, Mr. Speaker. And then I'll come back to her and that garbage that she spewed. This year, and I have, it's not the 2024 budget, but the 2015 budget. The 2015 budget that the then Honorable Member Winston Jordan presented under the APNU fresh government. And I want to show you a figure. This is not me, this is your budget. This is not in our budget. I wasn't even catering about politics at that time. This year says, in this year, 2015, they put $39.4 billion as a total capital spend of the whole country. $39.4 billion. And this was the year that they say is a good life year. This is their capital spend. The rest is what they're eating and drinking. This is capital spend to build school, to build road, to build hospital, to build bridges, to do hospital, every infrastructure, every ministry, $39.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, this money in an oil and gas economy that you have to prepare for a future. This, the next year it will go up. You want me to go to the next year? Because the next year it will go up either. It move up by inches. So don't go there. Mr. Speaker, this is hurting them. The 2 of them boys up there, the honorable members, them getting antsy. Let me finish. I wasn't disturbing your people when I was speaking. You might learn something. Mr. Speaker, in the budget speech, you know how much you put for roads, community roads? Honorable Member Bishop, you'll be ashamed to know that they only put $544 million to build community roads in this country. Less than 16 roads you can get from that. Less than, if you take $20 million to build a community road, less than 16 roads you can get for that. How you going to build a country with 16 roads? Come on, this is not me, this is your budget. You want exhibit, Mr. Speaker? I borrowed this from your parliament, but I can give you the exhibit if you want. This is the fact. This is the record that you're talking about good life. That is theirs. You know what is ours this year? Just this year alone. Your whole country budget for miscellaneous road alone is $73.2 billion. Because we, in this government, care for the communities. We care for the children who used to gotta walk in the mud to go to school. We care for the farmers who had to fetch the planting on the back come out from the dam. We care for them. That's why we're building the country. And we built over 4,000 roads since we came into this to this government. So when they talk about performance against APNU and workload management, it is chalk and cheese. It is chalk and cheese. You can't compare it. Hold on, man. Hold on, man. This is my presentation. You honorable member, you hold on. This honorable member, Jurita Finance, spoke about debt and debt management and management of the economy. Oh Lord, I sit down there, I have to drink a glass of water so my stomach don't turn. I have to sit down and my stomach don't turn. Mr. Speaker, the debt of any country or the debt burden is calculated by the debt over the GDP. So you call it your debt burden. It's a GDP, debt to GDP ratio. Your debt burden. It is 27%. It is 27%. The Honorable Minister Singh put it inside the document. She didn't read or she didn't compare. Because if you compared it to the rest of the Western Hemisphere, nobody, no country has a low debt to equity, debt to GDP ratio or tax burden as Guyana. Guyana is the lowest in ECLAC, is the lowest in the entire Western Hemisphere. And that is something that they could never achieve. So don't speak about debt and debt management and management of the economy. The debt, I saw Big and Kaichor News, them too, have, ballooning debt of 44 billion. The debt stock of this country, going back decades, we still paying for some of them old projects. It adds up and it keeps adding, but it's only 3.8% of your total spend. 3.8, just divide 44 billion over 1,146 billion. You'll get it. 44 billion dollars over the total budgets of 1.1 trillion. And you'll get 3.8%. That is the smallest. When we took government, and Minister Ashley has normally come to this podium and said the same thing, it's 153, it was 100, your debt service ratio was 153%. It means for every dollar you earn, Mr. Speaker, you got to borrow 53 cents to pay, just servicing your debt. That is what we inherited from an APNU government, a PNC government at that time. But you know, in usual reptilian mode, the reptile changed its skin. So they now come with a different thing now. They know to manage the economy. They know how to manage the economy. Remember, some reptiles change their skin all the time. PNC, PNCR, PNC1G, Guyana, AFP, APNU, AFC. Recently, I see community development groups at the last local government election. They're just changing all the time. Just changing all the time. In the usual reptilian mode, Mr. Speaker. But we have to call it for what it is. They don't know about managing any economy. I'll tell you how they don't know about managing it, how not to do. They do all the wrong things. They spend money in the wrong places. They spend money on current expenditure, recurring expenditure, all the time. They just carry up the normal running of ministries and agencies. Nothing to do with capital formation spending and social formation spending. And let me tell you what this budget has inside to make sure that the entire world knows that this budget have everything that is good for Guyana inside. Good for Guyana. I made some notes on it. More for the boys. First, Mr. Speaker, they are talking about Guyana and the mismanagement of the economy. I don't know which economy in the face of this earth grows and have the tag and the title of fastest growing economy in the world, running at 33% this year, and next year projected to be 34+%. Who manages a bad economy like that? Are we crazy in this house? Is this the house of crazies? I don't think so, Mr. Speaker. This is an honorable house. 33% GDP, the fastest growing economy in the world. That sounds to you like mismanagement? That sounds like somebody just trying to find fault with something good. The global growth is subjected to decelerate by 1.5% when we are growing at 34%. The entire Europe bloc is seeing a reduction in growth. When they do the reports now in the ECLAC report, the economic reports, they pull out Guyana. You know why they pull out Guyana from the normal gang or the normal set of countries? It's because we are termed in mathematics what you call an outlier. The law of averages put everybody in one way, in one group, but we have to be plucked out and put separately because the growth is an outlier. It distorts the growth of the entire ECLAC region. So they pull it out one side and they put Guyana separately because that is how good we are doing. To have a APNU member parliament coming and say that the economy is managed bad, I don't know what to call that. I don't know if this is garbage that I see at Hill Street the other day when I drive through in Albistown, that the city hall had to go and clean up. Because it is plain garbage they come in here and spew. And I'm sorry that she's left the house because I like to rebut them when they talk. Mr. Speaker, the entire LAC region will grow at 2.2%. You see what I talk about, the law of averages and the outliers? That is mathematics and that is how they do these reports. We should be proud to know that Guyana is treated and seen in that way by even the international financial institution who prepare the reports. Mr. Speaker, this budget, I had the opportunity to speak to some folks in Albistown last Friday. And I was talking about the budget and what the budget have inside. And one of the groups, or the groups of people in the country, are vulnerable groups, the poor. Mr. Speaker, when I speak about the great turning away that the APNU did, I'll tell you now what it means. Mr. Speaker, in this budget, 205,000 children will receive $45,000 come 2024. 205,000 from all walks of life, every race, every creed. You know what they did? They turned the face from those people and said, we're not giving you the crash grant. The former president of Guyana said they can't afford it. How is it that the PPP government can afford it suddenly and increase it to 45? Huh? So y'all in oil money 2015, 16, 17, 18, oil wasn't producing out them thing. Y'all, that is their excuse for not having a heart. That is their excuse, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about something that is different. In every person, there's a value system. In every person, there's a value system. You care for certain things, and you go after it. If the collective value system for the APNU is to deny children the right to little money to help them buy uniform and take them to school to get a little education, they don't even deserve to be in opposition if that is their value system, because that is what it did. They took it away from children. They even deserve to be in opposition once yet a government. Mr. Speaker, in this budget, have about $70 billion. Whether it's for old age pension, and you know what they do, Mr. Speaker? They clock out the old age pension because they say, oh, it's a 3,000 year-on-year, a 3,000 year-on-year increase. But they didn't realize that when we took government, it was 20,500, and it's now 36,000, nearly double, 75% increase in the old age pension. But they decide to pluck that one out and say, okay, we're going to go after this one. We're not going to talk about the other good things in the budget. But my job is to talk about the other good things in the budget. So the children then will get their crash grant. There will be 13,000 people in the tax bracket under 100 grand will now see they don't pay a tax. But that's only what is recorded in the GRA system. There are a lot of people out there that pay people and it's not recorded in the GRA. They also will benefit from it. Huh? Yes, about settlement when they had the fees. Right? Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about, apart from the old age pension, the survivors benefit that we have now. All of these things are geared to help the poor and the vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, they turn their face away from children, the older folks, public assistance program, all of them. We have a whole ministry run by Minister of India that deals with all of these things. Whole day, every day, all over the country, people are being looked at and they are given these benefits. They never used to do these things. Mr. Speaker, when you go out in the country and you walk the place, rather than sit like armchair generals in your office and do desk review, go out and meet people and you'll hear from them. And a lot of people are being helped by this government. We don't turn our face from the fatherless. We don't turn our face from the blind. We don't turn our face from the downtrodden. We embrace it and we put programs in place to help them. That is what this budget is delivering. That is what it is delivering. And you check every line of the budget and you will see it.
Okay, I checked my time and I see you need an extension to conclude.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask for the honourable member to have 5 more minutes to conclude his excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Honorable Member, Mr. Deodat Indar.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to raise the issue of drainage and irrigation. Drainage and irrigation will see $72.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, let me say this. Farmers in this country who mine the rest of this country in terms of producing the bora, the balanja, the pumpkin, the squash, and the edo, and everything else, they need drainage and irrigation for increasing crop yield. If they don't have the drainage, the water going to flood the land, and the little that they have to sell very expensive. So the drainage and irrigation is designed to help the thousands upon thousands of farmers that we had to bring down the cost of food because the yield goes up. And that is what we are doing here. This is an entire section of our country that we are addressing. In the Honorable Minister Zulfikar, they talk about shrimp production and money we get for shrimp and rice. And that is I don't know if it's zombie mathematics or so, but what they need to know is that Guyana has been leading with food production in the entire region. That is what you call leadership. The president of this country, along with the ministers, leading that fight. We have planted things we never planted before. We have planted things that we never planted before. Crops that we never even think about engaging in, we now engage in and planting and having production out of it. That is what agriculture is doing for that segment of our population. Farmers have families too. Farmers have children too. Farmers need to pay and eat too. So you have to help them with fertilizer. We remove all of the taxes from the fertilizer that they tax. Imagine you all taxing things that grow food for people to eat. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, the AP and you taxing the very things for farmers to use to grow food for themselves eat and their children eat. What more madness, economic madness you can conduct in a country than that? Herbicide and pesticide, they tax that too. Mr. Speaker, education, 135 billion.2 for education. That, Mr. Speaker, is investment in the next generation. All of us in here, we ain't gonna pass the mortality rate. Some of us might be lucky to transgress over for 65 to 70. The rest, we gotta look to the next generation. We need to build a country that have bright people to deal with what the future will bring to us. The challenges of global warming, of disaster, of global hunger. We need people in this country to deal with those things. How do you do that? We have to train them. We have to put them in school. We have to build a country with a good knowledge stock. Not what they did. Not what they did. And tax people. And get a self-scholarship. Mr. Speaker. They complete the scholarship. Mr. Speaker, 129.8 billion for healthcare. How else do you show love to a society other than caring for them when they're most sick? How else does a government express love to the people that elected them other than showing that when your child's sick, your auntie sick, your uncle, your grandmother, your chacha, whoever sick, that we got an hospital for you to go to, you're going to get free drugs. We are building the modern healthcare system in this country. This money is an expression of love to the people of Guyana. This is how you care for people, through dealing with the healthcare. And the Honorable, my friend and Honorable Member Dr. Frank Anthony is leading this. And there's no better man to do the job. So thank you very much. Excellent. Mr. Speaker, no, I'm done with you yet, Mr. Mahipal. Mr. Speaker, I want to also point to roads and bridges. Roads and bridges. The last one I left. Roads and bridges. $204.1 billion. Last but not least. Last but not least. Here, once somebody says stupidness, I want you all go in the community and let the people brick you all down. Excuse my language. For not building the road. Because you know what they did? In 2015, I have their budget. 16 road. 16 road. One community that we go to, we build more than 16 roads. You cannot erase the record of the APNU government in this country. No matter how much you scrub it, tear out the page. No, you can't erase it. It's there. And it's in the records. And I'll show them the records. That's right. 204 billion for every community from Bautistan in this country will see development and has seen development. Because as I said, we built out, my good friend and partner in the Ministry of Public Works, over 4,000 roads, community roads, all of the highways. All of the highways and the byways and the bridges, we are building them. Mr. Speaker, I know you have signaled that my time is up. I can spend another day at this podium. But I want to say that this budget that they presented, it belongs where it is, in the past. In the past, it should not, this and their government should never see the face of office again because of their philosophy. Their philosophy is limited, Mr. Speaker. The collective wisdom that they have is shortened. It is only 2-3 people make decisions in their government. This government that we have is one that seeks counsel from every single minister, every single public officer. That is how we operate. That is how we operate. Mr. Speaker, I will close by saying that the 2024 budget that was read out by the Right Honorable Member Dr. Singh is a budget for every strata of life in Guyana. Every strata of life. It addressed all of the problems we are facing. All of the problems we are facing in a various grouping of people, including building a country that when the foreigners come in here by the thousands, they see the country that everybody's talking about overseas, that is the #1 growing economy. They see that the country is revving with economic activity. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, before we break, a couple of housekeeping matters. I would